Welcome, Mr. Tony Foster. Welcome to American International University, Kuwait. It's a pleasure to have you inspiring our students and members of our AIU community. Thank you for all the work that you do. There are some questions that I want to take this opportunity and ask you and hopefully get some insight, and you can share from your experiences and hopefully motivate our younger audiences watching this video right now.
Yes,
So
my
let me
pleasure.
begin by asking you, how did you begin your journey at NASA? And who inspired you growing up? Was there somebody who led you towards this path, or was this something that you came about? Tell us your experience.
Yeah, I started at NASA straight out of graduate school at the University of Maryland. And I was an aerospace engineering student. I had a professor who taught a class on human space exploration and surviving in space. And I knew that she worked at NASA, so before I graduated, I asked, do you have any positions available, or do you know of any openings? And she pointed me in the direction of a company that was hiring to work on the space shuttle. So I applied and was accepted, and that's how I started working for NASA. It was a private company, but that was my entry into that work. And so it was a combination of being in the right place at the right time, having a connection through a professor and networking, and also being in a location that already had a strong partnership between the university and NASA. And then I would say my inspiration as I was growing up, I started in astronomy. I started by learning about the stars, and so it's a little bit corny, I think, but the stars were my inspiration. But my parents were really my inspiration in terms of their encouragement for me to pursue my dream, to find what I was passionate about, and to follow that, no matter what.
Beautiful. I love that you also mentioned a little bit about networking, because that just goes to show it's really important to kind of build relationships no matter where you are, especially if you're in an environment that promotes learning, promotes education, whether that be at a study environment or work environment, because you never know what opportunities certain interactions might open. I remember one conversation that I had with a mentor of mine at university who said sometimes the smallest conversations can lead to the biggest opportunities.
Yes.
So that was beautiful.
That's
Thank you for
true.
sharing
That's
that.
been my experience as well.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, coming into the work that NASA does and space exploration, a lot of people understand that, yeah, NASA is space, but it's also important to understand what kind of impact it has. So how would you describe the impact, the work that NASA has in space exploration as a whole to human civilization?
Yeah, yes, I always take an opportunity at that kind of question to remind people that NASA started out with a basis in space, but not just space, also aeronautical. Right? That's one of the A's in NASA. And so there's a lot of research that's done here on Earth in terms of flight and aeronautics that, of course, benefit things like global travel and safety, of which I've been a part of. So that's one piece. And then in the space area, NASA is a space agency, along with many other space agencies around the world that we collaborate with. And I always try to remind people that we do things like exploration to learn about the things that we don't know, to prove theories, to do pure science. But for almost every mission that we do, there is some benefit to humankind here on Earth, whether it's a new technology that's developed that can, what we call a spin-off, that can be used for an application on Earth, or it's something that we learn about the human condition or the human body, and how our cells work and how we regenerate, or it's something that we learn about medicine. That can all be applied to people on Earth to benefit mankind. So even though we have a primary focus that's space, the secondary benefits for the human race have been extraordinary.
Actually, while you were saying that, it just clicked to me. I was learning or reading a little bit about self-development and how one can go about improving themselves. And there was this bit which relates to, what you just said, is that if you focus on big goals and if you focus on big targets, in the process of that pursuit, you will achieve many things that you did not know. I think maybe that's
That's
kind
very
of
true.
a little bit something that you were
Yes,
saying is that,
absolutely.
NASA has goals and you have targets and you try to achieve them, but while discovering something, you find something else and you're like, hey, world, here you go.
Absolutely, and it's part of our mentality too, as we go along this path towards whatever the mission
Yeah.
is, that there's these little steps along the way,
Mhm.
and NASA is a big proponent of learning lessons.
Okay.
We have a whole organization within NASA that's about lessons learned, capturing the lessons learned, not only so that we don't repeat failures, like the ones that you're familiar with, the losses of in human spaceflight, for example, but that we take advantage of the things that we do well and remember this is how we should do it in the future. That's how we've built up our mission set. So we can do this mission and maybe 40% of it we do the exact same way that we did this mission
Yeah.
because it worked. So why change it? And that's
Definitely.
how we've built success. But there's always a constant attitude of learning
Yeah.
and betterment.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Growth mindset.
Yes, growth mindset. It's perfect.
That's fantastic. So throughout the work that NASA does, this is just in terms of space exploration. There are obviously some questions that everyone has been thinking. There's debates on the internet about it, and I kind of want to ask you this question. And this it became more. It kind of surfaced a little bit more with the recent James Webb Telescope, where we saw pictures that just how vast our universe is. And that kind of raised the question again as to, do you think we can find planets that are just as habitable as our Earth somewhere out there?
Yeah, I think that statistically speaking, it would be very improbable that we are the only Earth-like planet in the universe. It's a vast universe, as you've said, and we're learning more and more about it. And a student asked me this question earlier this week: Do you think there's life out there, somewhere, or do you think there's a planet that could host life? And while we continue to look for that, we have found planets that, and the science is coming. The engineering to be able to look at those planets is progressing. We're not yet to the point where we have sent something to a Earth-like planet around another star to study it, right? We can study from a distance. And so there's some things that we can infer from the science that we see, some things we can understand and some things we cannot. So for example, now we've seen there's planets that are circling, orbiting around similar stars to our sun, that have a similar atmospheric composition based on the spectrum of light that we see. And so we can say that may be a place where there's an Earth-like planet, but that's as far as we've come so far. Obviously, we need to keep looking, and we will keep looking. It's a big part of NASA's mission right now, I would say, studying Earth-like planets in the pursuit of this universal understanding. It's always hard to answer, do you think there's life out there? Because it's a very personal question of it brings in people's understanding of science, their personal beliefs about the universe and where we
Definitely.
come from.
Definitely.
It's a fundamental question of humanity. Are we alone in the universe?
Given the amount of technology that we've developed, NASA's developed in the last decade even, how far do you think space exploration can go in the next, say, 50 years?
That's a great question. I'm a hopeful optimist.
Yeah.
I think that you can achieve amazing things if you have the people who are dedicated to it and the budget to support it. So it depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
It depends on the different space agencies around the world and what they're going to be funded to do and what they're going to pursue. I think from a technology perspective, something like the James Webb Space Telescope already shows us that we can achieve amazing things through engineering.
Yeah.
And the first images that have come back, of course, are extraordinary, and they show us that we can discover amazing things when we apply that engineering. So I'm always hopeful and optimistic that we will continue to advance. We started with many space telescopes that led to Hubble, and from Hubble we're now at James Webb, and both are amazing observatories. And James Webb's building upon the legacy that Hubble has established, and it's advancing. And we will advance again, just like we're doing with the Artemis missions to the moon
That's beautiful.
and beyond. We build on our legacy and move forward.
That's beautiful. I think absolutely the hunger for curiosity and of course the right budget and a lot of collaboration. I'm sure the next 50 years are going to be absolutely phenomenal. I want to circle back a little bit to how you mentioned learning from a distance or acting from a distance. And I want to talk about how understanding that the average Joe or the average person may not be directly involved with organizations such as NASA. So, in our capacity as maybe students or people with everyday jobs, how can we get involved with scientific discoveries? What can we do in our daily lives that promote or encourage the work that NASA is doing and space exploration as a whole?
Yes, I think that the first thing, and I always encourage anybody, whether you're a student or an adult or any age,
Yeah.
keep learning. Don't stop learning. Be a learner by habit. And the reason I say that is that you may consider yourself an average person in society with a just an everyday job. But I know many people in those average jobs that consider themselves average, but they have a knowledge of something that I could never fathom obtaining myself, right? Because they've studied it and they've learned it and they are passionate about it. And so when it comes to the sciences, whether it's technology programs for students or just an average person who has a job completely unrelated to science or space exploration, and I have them in my family who love astronomy, keep learning, because what happens when you do that, you may discover that you will enter into that profession at some point, or you will contribute in some way. I just met somebody upstairs a few minutes ago who was not an astronomy degree, who is now taking astrophotography in the desert every day for hours with his own equipment through his own self-study, and is producing amazing images of nebula and stars and interstellar gases with his with his own equipment, because he's passionate about it and he's decided that's what he wants to learn. But what's happened from that is now he is going to inspire others to do the same, and he's going to teach people that he comes across with his beautiful photography something about the universe that they didn't know. And I think that expansion of knowledge across all of us helps us continue to inspire and be inspired, by exploration, by advancement of technology here on Earth, or whatever it may be. It's an inspiration to keep working and keep learning.
I love that. And also, just to add a little bit to that, I think it's really cool. So it's one thing to learn, feed your curiosity. At the same time, it's also learning how to learn, because I think that is what will give you that continuity to just keep inspiring others and then keep going at it.
Yes, it takes a proactive a nature sometimes, but that can also be learned.
Yes.
Right. Not to be redundant,
No,
but it can be learned.
definitely.
So and yes, don't stop where with your learning. It's not just a complete self-interest. Share it with others. I would not probably be where I am if, for example, my father didn't share his passion for the unknown with me and ask me questions that made me, wonder. I don't know how that works, but I'm really interested. And he was a very curious person.
Wow.
And I learned that habit from him, or that trait from him. And it changed the way that I approached my studies. It changed the way I approached my job.
That's amazing.
So I think it's the inspirational piece of somebody who is hungry for knowledge can't be understated.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Final question, and this is, I'm sure our younger audience is going to be very curious about this. If somebody wanted to pursue a career in organizations such as NASA, what kind of advice would you give them? What kind of material do they need to focus on? What subjects should be their core topics?
Yes, so there are many paths to working with NASA.
Yes.
There is working for the agency directly. There's partnering with a university that does work with NASA. There's private organizations all over the world that do work with NASA, and they're all options. They all have their own requirements. When you want to work for for NASA directly, there are, as an engineer or scientist, there's a basic level of math and science that you need. If you want to work for the agency as a lawyer or in accounting, or there's a basic level of those, of understanding and education that you need. And then every company that you might work for that does work with NASA has similar requirements. So as students are trying to find their path to what they want to do, to the industry that they want to work in, or the agencies they want to work for, the first step is always researching and seeing what's available to them, in country or internationally. What companies are involved in space? What national agencies and international organizations are involved in space, whether they partner with NASA or not. There are many agencies around the world that are exploring the universe and that are involved in human space exploration. So there's many avenues. First, research and find what's available to you, and then what that usually leads to, of course, an understanding of the industry. But also you'll find the things that are more attractive. Working for a government, it has a set of benefits. Working for a private company has a set of benefits. Studying at this university has benefits, or this one, or maybe there's studying overseas has its own benefits and unique experience. And so you find those things as you're researching your field. And the last thing I would say, though, is that it's not let me study this summer and figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life, and then I'll just go do that. It's not a black and white process. I started in astronomy, and as I graduated, I decided I wanted to do engineering instead. So I moved in that direction. As I was doing engineering, I decided I wanted to understand how business works. So I worked on a business degree, and that carried me forward on a different kind of path. And so, again, lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Keep evolving and keep networking, and don't stop looking for open doors.
That's amazing. Thank you, because you not only just gave an answer, you gave a step-by-step as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that a lot of people are going to appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the work that you do. Conversations like these, I'm sure, are also going to inspire other people to at least look into NASA, look into the work that they're doing, look into space exploration, and hopefully generate the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you very
you.
much.